Alrighty, Josh Room from East West Sailing Improvements. Today, I'm back. It's been a while. I needed to get away. I needed a break. I needed to enjoy the SD sun, and I just needed to get away. But I'm back. I've tried recording this about 4 times, and every time I record it, I sound like Bruce Lee in an old Chinese movie, like, fight me. Because caffeine is good. And the sound is about separated from my voice. So if it does it again, I'm going to post it, and I don't care. You'll still get the gist of it. You listen to it probably more than looking at me. So hopefully it works. Today I want to talk about caffeine and coffee and the benefits of it and how to use it. Now, I'm not saying every single person needs coffee. Everyone should drink coffee every day. The problem is there's so many misconceptions about coffee, just like there is about dairy, like I talked about in my milk video that I did. Now, the thing about caffeine or coffee is if you use it appropriately, and I'll talk about some of the, not only the benefits, but how to use it appropriately, you can actually increase metabolism or stimulate metabolism. And a lot of people say, well, it makes me hyper, I can't sleep, it makes me jittery, it taxes my adrenals, I get adrenal fatigue. Well, first of all, if you're doing it, you're not really seeing you're seeing the negative side effect of caffeine, but it's because you're doing it on an empty stomach. Maybe you're hypoglycemic, maybe you're not getting sugar in the cell, maybe you're eating tons of unsaturated fats, maybe you're not regulating your blood sugar. Maybe you're eating the wrong types of foods that you can't break down, the wrong food frequencies, the wrong food ratios. So as you can see, there's a lot of components that go into using coffee or caffeine medicinally. And you can use nutrients as your supplement instead of overdosing on supplements. You know, to how to push yourself thermogenic. You can take stimulants, but why not use caffeine? Why not stimulate the thyroid, progesterone production, reduce inflammation? That's going to push you thermogenic. And there's so many nutrients and minerals that can do that. So if we look at the benefits of coffee, now I got a list here about 35 to 40 benefits of coffee that will be put in a document that might be put into some program that I might be doing pretty soon with my wife. But I'm just saying. So some of the benefits of coffee is that it can increase your metabolism, stimulate metabolism. And you know this by looking at body temperature. If you see body temperature go up, it typically helps to speed up your metabolism. It can actually help increase the amount of energy used by the brain because it allows more blood flow to get to the brain. And when we're in an inflammatory state, we have a damaged metabolism. Estrogen is typically dominant, and you see decreased blood flow to the brain. And if you think I'm talking fast, I'm doing this because I like to keep my videos as short as possible, under 10 minutes, so I can upload them, but that's about as short as I can keep them. Secondly, it protects the liver from alcohol, prescription meds, and other toxins, especially detoxifying estrogen. It protects against radiation, chemical carcinogens, viruses, and estrogen. When you're estrogen dominant, 4 different reasons I've talked about, you can't detoxify estrogen, you're overproducing it because of a blood sugar handling issue or stress, you're over-synthesizing progesterone to fight stress, or you're basically deficient in progesterone, the liver gets backed up and overburdened. So caffeine or coffee can actually protect against this toxin in itself because estrogen, if it's unopposed or overproduced, is essentially a carcinogen and causes cell proliferation, cancer, and things like that, inhibits the thyroid, is immunosuppressive, and on and on and on. It actually, coffee itself or caffeine, inhibits platelet aggregation. You see people that are serotonin and estrogen dominant typically have loss of sodium in the urine, and they get thicker blood in a sense, or decreased blood volume, because estrogen actually pulls albumin out of the blood and water into the tissues, causes edema, and causes a lower blood volume. Coffee itself, if sipped after a meal, can actually inhibit iron absorption or downregulate the amount of iron that is absorbed after the meal. Iron is a heavy metal, and it's highly toxic. We'll keep it at that. If you want to learn more about it, maybe I'll do a YouTube clip soon. If not, research it on your own. Third, caffeine itself, or coffee, caffeine, coffee, can actually stop the production of free radicals. Now, so many people are so into taking antioxidants. Well, the funny thing is, take a look at what's causing pro-oxidation in your life and reduce that. Just like taking anti-inflammatories, look what was causing inflammation in your life and reduce that. At the same time, you have some of the biggest antioxidants in your body, like cholesterol. And caffeine can actually stop the production of free radicals, which can actually help lower cholesterol over time, what we call bad cholesterol. It's really not bad. You need it. Coffee increases the concentration of progesterone in the body as it synthesizes with progesterone to increase its concentration in the blood and the tissues. Progesterone is thermogenic, it's protective to the body, the thyroid, and it stimulates the metabolism, digestion, and the hormonal healing process. And Ray Peat basically says that coffee has remarkable similarities with the thyroid and progesterone. You can get a lot of magnesium and B1 in coffee, and magnesium actually synthesizes with progesterone to regulate edema, blood sugar, help with muscle contraction, relaxation, and these different minerals and B vitamins actually help with T4 production in the body, which is most of the thyroid that you produce and store in the thyroid, and most of your peripheral conversion happens in the liver. So the coffee can actually help with that by supporting the liver. It supports serotonin uptake in the nerve and inhibits platelet aggregation or blood clotting, like I mentioned. It lowers cadmium levels in the tissues, and typically smokers or tobacco users have higher cadmium levels, so you can actually use caffeine to reduce it. It can actually lower serum potassium after exercise, stop blood clotting by reducing thromboxane production, which is an inflammatory marker, thus increasing blood sugar and regulating metabolism and energy production after workout, so you don't get pushed into that hyperadrenaline, hypercortisol state. It can actually increase your basic metabolic rate by increasing cellular consumption of glucose or increasing glucose oxidation. And certain things that decrease glucose oxidation are unsaturated fats. Let's take a look. It can increase blood volume, like I talked about, by increasing albumin, reducing serotonin, reducing estrogen. But it can increase CO2 levels in the body, which dilates the blood vessels and actually increases the metabolic activity of the thyroid. So it can actually produce, by increasing CO2, decreasing serotonin, you get a upregulation of the thyroid, which increases your metabolism, your body temperature, and overall state of being in an anti-inflammatory state. What else did I want to say that's important? Caffeine itself in coffee can actually downregulate the release of serotonin. Now, when we eat tons of muscle meats, you store tryptophan in the tissues. When you have a stress reaction, blood sugar handling issue, cortisol demineralizes bone and tissue, you release tryptophan into the body, you release the amount of serotonin production in the body, and under inflammation, this causes vascular leakiness, weakness, GI bleeding, and things like that. So we want to downregulate that response because of the vascular spasm it creates. It increases blood pressure, blood pooling, inflammation. So caffeine itself can actually prevent the release of the serotonin. The same thing with niacinamide. Niacinamide does the same thing as caffeine, which inhibits lipolysis in a sense. And at the same time, the last one, I'm not going to go through my whole list, but caffeine actually downregulates histamine, which is an inflammatory marker. When you have a histamine reaction, you typically get respiratory issues because you have H1, H2 receptors in your lungs. You get rashes, mucus in your nose, mucus in your throat. That's a histamine reaction. It downregulates serotonin, estrogen, mast cells, which increases CO2 and production in the body. It increases your overall immunity and vitality, so it can reduce inflammation. How do we use caffeine or coffee? Well, of course, never on an empty stomach. Using caffeine, coffee, whatever you want to call it, on an empty stomach, you will get an adrenaline response. And if you look at most of the research, if you drink a glass of water on an empty stomach and you're hypoglycemic, if you eat a carb just by itself, a fat, a protein, you drink orange juice by itself, it doesn't matter really what it is, you're going to get an adrenaline response. You could sit in a jacuzzi, you could sit in a bathtub, be hypoglycemic, or really have dysregulated blood sugar, and you're going to get an adrenaline response, and that's why you get the elevated heart rate, blood pressure, jitteriness, insomnia. So never drink coffee on an empty stomach. You want to make sure that you're always taking in the right macronutrients throughout the day, proteins, carbs, fats, in the right ratios, the right grams, the right calories at each meal, the right food frequencies, and the right calories at the end of the day to meet your metabolic needs. So when you use the coffee, you can actually get a kick in your metabolism and not adrenaline response. So your food is a huge part of it. I'm not just saying drink coffee and you're going to be great. You need to look at your macronutrients as well. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs coffee as well. Some people don't want to use it, which is fine. I'm just giving you some tools of the trade that I've used with some people that actually work to stimulate their metabolism. Make sure that when you use coffee, you can just use it with a heavy fat, like cream, clover, organic cream doesn't have carrageenan in it. Make sure your creams or your milk doesn't have carrageenan or guar gum, which can create more inflammation. But you can use cream as well as you can put in some gelatin, or you can use coconut oil instead of the cream, or you can use honey or sucrose or eat it with a fruit if you don't want to do that, to get a pure macronutrient ratio, almost like a meal, a protein, carb, and fat to meet your needs. You never want to just do black coffee by itself. Start with a small amount if you never really drank coffee. Start with a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, 1 ounce, 2 ounce. Work your way up over a 3 to 6 month, 12-month long period. And at the same time, when you drink coffee, you want to sip it. So whatever you're drinking, I always tell people take 1, 2, 3, 4 hours to sip that coffee in order to stimulate metabolism and not get that adrenaline response. Now, of course, I'm not advocating drinking coffee late at night. I usually tell people it's person specific. Some people will use maybe a shot of espresso with some water, cream, sugar prior to working out, and they can still sleep at night because they're regulating their blood sugar. It all comes down to the person. You can use teas. The bottom line is when you're doing it, you want to make sure that you use an organic, of course. You don't want to use flavored coffees, but look at your temperature and pulse. If your temperature goes up, it's working for you. If your pulse stays the same, it's working for you. If it shoots up a little, it's working for you. If it goes from 40, let's say, beats per minute or 50 beats per minute, and you drank some of the coffee and you take it a half hour later and it went up like 20, 30, 40 beats, well, you're pushing out adrenaline. At the same time, if it goes up above 85, like it goes to 90, you're pushing out adrenaline, so you're not getting a response. So I know I talk fast, but this is my third time recording it. I wanted to keep it short. I'm out of here. Hope you enjoyed it. Peace.